Around, I'd say, a year ago, I started seeing these guys being used more and more at conventions like CES and MWC. And if you guys don't know what this is actually a smartphone gimbal. Now, it's very similar in premise to the gimbal stabilizers you see probably for mirrorless cameras, DSLRs, but these are meant for smartphones, of course. Now, if you don't know what they do, they basically help to steady your camera, your movement, so you don't see as much shake. And it made me really wonder whether or not this is going to be far more advantageous than just, say, using the OIS in your smartphone's camera. And we've seen the improvements made to OIS. It really gives you a steadier look, but how does it really compare against these smartphone gimbals? So in this video, I'm going to take 4 of today's top flagships, not all of them, but just 4 flagships that have been released this year. I'm going to compare their performance against these gimbals. The one I have here is the Gimbal Smooth 3. I also have the DJI Osmo Mobile, which are probably going to be the 2 most popular smartphone gimbals out there. So we'll take them out, do some test footage, and we're going to compare and see what happens. But before we get into the comparisons, I want to talk briefly about the 2 gimbals that I'll be using here. The first one is the Gimbal Smooth 3, and the other is going to be the DJI Osmo Mobile, 2 of the most popular smartphone gimbals out there. And what I like about these 2 smartphone gimbals is that they're fairly simple and straightforward. When it comes to setting it up, you just put the smartphone into the cradle, do some minor adjustments, and once it's balanced, you turn it on, and that's about it. And the other thing I want to talk about here are the smartphones I'll be using. So I have 4 Android smartphones. They're going to be the Google Pixel XL, the Huawei P10, the LG G6, and the Samsung Galaxy S8. Now I want to talk about briefly the settings that I'll be using here. Now I'm going to keep them all on the automatic mode when it comes to video. I'm shooting at 1080p because that's where the OIS usually kicks in. When you do 4K or even Quad HD, sometimes the OIS feature is not allowed. So we're going to stick with 1080p at 30 frames per second, automatic shooting mode, and I'm going to do a couple of tests, one with OIS off, another with OIS on, so you can see the 2, and then I'm going to put them on the respective stabilizers with both OIS on and off, just to show you the difference. The first phone here is the Google Pixel XL, and as you could tell already, OIS does make a big difference than just using it handheld. So this next segment is with the Gimbal Smooth 3, and already you could tell the difference. It's a lot smoother, more stabilized, especially when going up the stairs. And with the DJI Osmo Mobile, it's pretty similar, except that you notice just a little bit of a rocking motion going up the stairs. It's not bad, but still the general footage is pretty stabilized. Here's the comparison between the 2 gimbals with OIS on, comparing it without OIS and with just the phone and OIS on. Next up is the Huawei P10, and again, you could see the difference between using it handheld without OIS and then with it turned on. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the next parts because it's the same thing here with the Gimbal Smooth 3. You could tell it's very smooth, it's very stabilized, and no problems whatsoever. Moving on to the DJI Osmo Mobile, same exact thing. It looks nice and smooth, fluid movements, and it looks like you're walking on air. The LG G6 has some nice sharp looking footage, but as you could tell again, without OIS, it's pretty unusable because of the amount of shake going on. But that of course goes away when you start using these gimbal stabilizers, and I do notice that there's just slightly better results when you have OIS enabled and are using the gimbal stabilizers. And finally, we have the Galaxy S8, and no surprise again, with OIS, it really helps to keep things nice and steady looking versus without it at all. And the last thing here I want to show you guys is just a comparison between all four smartphones. Just using it handheld with OIS on, you could see the difference between all four. Still, for the most part, very smooth and usable, but not as smooth as using the gimbal stabilizers. You definitely notice more of a pronounced movement when you're going down the stairs. So after shooting all those segments, repeating it with all the phones, with OIS on and off, and then the gimbal stabilizers, I looked at all the footage, compared them all, and it's just unbelievable what these smartphone gimbal stabilizers do, because yes, they're still better performing than just relying on OIS. OIS, though, I gotta give credit, does a better job than just using it handheld without OIS at all. But the gimbal stabilizers gives you that walking on air look and feel with your shots. And if you're an enthusiast, an inspiring videographer, you will appreciate how fluid it looks versus just relying on OIS. The biggest thing I saw is just with the vertical movement, especially going up and down stairs. With OIS, it does a decent job, but you could still see just a little bit of a rocking motion, whereas with the gimbal stabilizers and with OIS enabled, that combination delivers some really fluid and smooth looking videos. And that's the beauty about them. And to add even more of that cinematic quality to your videos using these gimbal stabilizers with the combination of OIS in your smartphones, you'll probably want to check out these add-on attachment lenses. You can pick them up pretty much anywhere like Amazon. This one here is from the company Amir, and I use the wide-angle lens. This is actually a three-in-one lens system. It has a macro, a fisheye, and a wide-angle lens. I really like the wide-angle one because you can pair it not only with the rear cameras, but also with the front-facing camera. So if you're doing some sort of vlogging style video, you get a wider field of view thanks to the wide-angle lens. And if you're like a skateboarder or extreme sports type of person, the fisheye lens does a great job as well. At the end of the day, OIS is great, but stabilizers are even better. And as you could tell in the comparisons here that I showed you, the gimbal stabilizers do a far better job at keeping things nice and smooth and steady. Now, the gimbals themselves are going to cost you a pretty penny. The Zion Smooth 3 and the DJI Osmo Mobile cost $300. That's not cheap, but if you're serious about cinematography, shooting professional video, these gimbal stabilizers will achieve that, especially when you combine the OIS feature in today's smartphones. You're going to get some really fluid movements. And on top of that, not only do you get the stabilized movement, you have also different following modes. So with the stabilizers, you have built-in controls. It's a versatile tool if you're an inspiring videographer. So there you go, guys. That is the quick comparison between the OIS in today's smartphones and how they compare against the gimbal stabilizers for smartphones. If you guys want to learn more about any of the stuff I talked about in this video, you can check out our website, androidauthority.com. This is John V, signing off.